Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they come back as miniatures, get hit by a toy train, and have this sweet explosion. Today we're talking about Stephen King's lesser-known film, Sometimes They Come Back. It's an early 90s film. It's not his best, but certainly it's not his worst. There is one scene in particular that I keep thinking about. I keep going back to, wondering how they did it. So I thought it'd be fun to do a little lunchtime breakdown analysis of this scene and see what we discover. Okay, so let's jump right in. DB up and looking at some of the cast. Some kind of cool people in this film. Some strange connections. Tim Matheson, who's had a very illustrious career, really has done a little bit of everything. One thing I did want to call out is two people in particular that I think just really interesting. William Sanderson. Now, he is also ton of roles, ton of credits to his name, but he's in Blade Runner, J.F. Sebastian. Remember? Very cool. One of my favorite movies. And we also have Robert Russler. So when I saw the movie, I was like, oh, I know him from somewhere. I didn't know his name. But talk about some incredible films, like some very iconic films. Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Weird Science. And you know what I actually like on him, and I think would be a good movie in the future to do a breakdown on, because it's such a strange, unusual film, and they don't really make films like this anymore. Let's find Vamp. He's in Vamp, which is so strange, very, very strange, and it has Gracie Jones in it, and that's worth a breakdown. It is a really bizarre film that I think we need to explore at some point. It's kind of it's a comedy, but also kind of there's some horror elements. There's like this kind of eroticism component to it. Very creepy things happen in it. I love it. It's really not that popular a film. You don't really hear anybody talking about it too often. Okay, and we're back on the main page, and we know that it's made in 1991. Maybe that it was shot in 1990, maybe 1989. And here's the cast. In the credits of the film, it was shot in Missouri, Liberty, Missouri, and Kansas. And that will be a little interesting note that we dive into once we kind of look at this one scene in particular.
Okay.
So I want to stop right there. One thing I don't understand, before we dive into the scene I've been talking about, when I first saw this movie, this just really confused me. So I know that they're coming home to a home, and this is early 90s, so maybe they didn't have pictures, or maybe they just couldn't look it up online, but they move into this house in a terrible condition, and you'll see once they go into the bedroom, it just looks nasty. It looks like someone died in there. And I can't help but to think, like, why? I mean, maybe it's this in the Stephen King book. You know, maybe they wanted to keep true to that. I haven't read the book, so I don't know. But part of me just wonders that from a storytelling perspective of why. It doesn't make the film, it doesn't make anything spookier. It doesn't make it more interesting. It just looks sad. It just looks like this family's moving to this crappy house. You'll see this interior shot, and the kid's going, he's tucking his little boy into the bed, and the wall looks like someone had like threw up on it. It looks awful. But it looks like Hollywood stained in a way. It looks like they did even more to kind of make it look dilapidated. I don't understand it. I really don't. I don't know why they chose this. From a storytelling perspective, but what's interesting thing I'm starting to think about from a producing standpoint is maybe they chose it because it was for sale or abandoned, and they said, okay, maybe we contact whoever owns it right now, and we offer them a little bit of money. And this is our home location, which, you know, later in the film, they bust in through some windows, they come in, they storm in, and, you know, having a film crew in your home is quite frankly, it's a pain in the ass. It's not, I don't recommend it to anybody. Okay. So He's talking about not putting his child in danger, but the room looks like it looks like a crack house. Let's be honest. I would be concerned about their health in that home. But once again, I really don't know. And then they're there for a little while too, and you can see some of the set dressing. This is like more of an art department thing that I'm really nitpicking, but the house never really gets in better shape. It just kind of always looks crappy, even later on when they've been living there for a little bit. And everything looks very temporary, almost as if they never really wanted to unpack very much to settle in. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that too. Maybe they didn't feel comfortable to settle in because of his unresolved issues of the past. Maybe it's over my head. I don't know. Before we dive into the most critical shot of the film, there's a couple little scenes I wanted to highlight. One of which is right here. This is a parade scene. It's just kind of simple. We're walking through. I think it looks like most people knew that they were filming because not a lot of people are spiking the camera. But there's a couple in the background. So I think that they knew that there might have been something going on. It looks like it was shot with the same sort of camera, so they didn't try to do it low key. But maybe they did, and some things to kind of corral it a little bit. Let's watch. Okay, two things right here. What an asshole clown. He just walks up to him. Whoops, you dropped it. And then these shoes on this telephone pole or light post. I've personally never thrown a pair of shoes on a power line or a light post. It is a dream, though. We have this parade, this small town parade, and it looks like it was a legitimate parade. Maybe they staged it. That would have been probably a little expensive. Maybe they had to offer some snacks or refreshments to people to get everybody out there. Or maybe they did an actual parade and they lined it up with the parade that was going to be happening with the town. Sometimes I get a little tricky with trying to figure that out into a shooting schedule. So this might have happened maybe before or after it, but it's definitely a scene that you could drop right into a film if it didn't fit into the shooting schedule, and maybe it could be worked out with the actors and their schedules.
Hello, Mrs. Norman. Can Jimmy come out and play?
This is something I was talking about. They smash up some windows. You can see the door here is really nasty looking. You have the crap on the wall. It just makes me feel like they didn't bother to clean up the house at all. It just looks so dingy. That's why I kind of feel like it was an abandoned house. Now we're finally at the scene that I wanted to talk about. That really got me thinking about how it was made and the potential ways they could have shot it, if it was practical, what parts were miniatures. And when you're watching it for the first time, it goes by really fast. But here we'll do like a little bit of a breakdown and like a frame by frame, so we can kind of see when things were switched out. At the very beginning of the film, this is what sets up this memory that he has of his brother. They run into these greasers on the track, and they get in a confrontation. The brother gets stabbed. A train's coming. They can hear it come, and he's unable to save his brother, and he takes off running, and then the car gets hit by this train. Let's see. Okay, so one of the guys jumps out of the car, and later in the film, it's William JF Sebastian that he goes to get his help. Look at the train. Did you see the train? Look at the top line of the train. It's kind of So it looks like it might have been an optical effect. And I've been thinking about this for a while. Like, if it were, it's a real tunnel. And maybe they did a plate there and then that's put on top of it. It's one solution. Also, part of me wonders, like, is that a rear projection where they had it and it was a video coming closer maybe of the model that then they shot the day of? Because it doesn't look like the axis of the train comes towards them any closer. Let's look again. It's just a sound. It doesn't look like it's coming any closer to me. So it's the sound that we think it's happening. We think it's coming in and it's intercut with these little miniatures. And here we see another miniature. It's coming up close. We see the end of the brick wall to the left right there, but that doesn't match the actual tunnel. Once again, we still see the tunnel right here. It doesn't look like it's moving any closer, but this one does look closer than the last one. That is looks like a real person still in it. So that could have been an optical effect for this one. We have our model shot right here, our miniature. We have the frame right here and it's stopped and you can clearly see that it's a miniature. But what's interesting is not the fact that it's a miniature. They did a really good job disguising that with some really clever editing and concealing some things. But a lot of the pre-production you have to think about. So what does the train look like? Okay, well, that has to be decided on because if they did an optical effect, they'd have to potentially line it up. And then what's the sense of scale? What's the location? How, if they're going to build this model that this miniature is going to go through, it has to look similar. So they would have had to lock a location or get like the look of it down. It's very dark, which helps out, so it hides imperfections. But also you have to think about the car that they used. The graphic right here where you see that is a great way to help sell it because you see that throughout the whole film and the color of it, this kind of matte black, goes by really fast. Very easy to think that it was real. This was kind of random. I don't know what this is from. A different angle. They just kind of threw it in there. I don't know. It happens so fast in real time. We see it again right here. Random explosion. See, it doesn't really match up, but they did a pretty good job. Another explosion. More flames. They definitely milked that sequence, but hey, it's costly. They probably put a lot of time, money, and energy to make it look good, to make it believable. So I don't blame them for it. I think all in all, it's worth just thinking about from a producing standpoint what this sequence. So not only did you have like the action component that leads up to it, you have the actual physical location. We'll look up here soon, and then you have the thought of like, okay, when is it going to not be live action, or excuse me, when is it not going to be real actors and when does it go into the miniatures, and like at what point do we need to take it to? And that's an interesting discussion that I think I wish I could have been a part of, and I could have listened to it, of how they were thinking about it, like up into the point and when they're going to switch it out to the miniatures. So we have the actual tunnel pulled up. It's Rocheport, not sure how you say it, but it's a real life place. And you can see it doesn't have the track laid down Maybe that was brought in for the film, or maybe it was still in there. It does look like it was a real tunnel at in the past that then they converted. Here's some images on Google. It's part of a Katy Trail in Missouri. And if you look around, here's like you can see outside. You can see these houses. It's part of a trail right now. So it looks like that from the two locations about 2 hours apart into Liberty, Missouri, where they filmed, I think, the downtown scenes. This looks like it. So maybe the house was in Liberty. They filmed those together. The house scenes and the outdoor, the school, and then they did the tunnel when they traveled. Maybe they did like a small little group out there to get those night shots and the reaction shots, all that. And then there was a portal scene at the very end. That might have been done in like maybe 2 or 3 days. This face. I wish they would have incorporated them like this version of them more. This is the climax of the movie where the train comes in and just hits them, sends them back to wherever they come from. And I guess they're showing their true selves. I love it. I wish they would have really doubled down on this look. But yeah. So anyways, this is just a small little breakdown of this film. I think the interesting thing to think about, we have an interesting home, a question of, was it abandoned? Was it rented out for the production of it so they could smash it up a little bit, set up in there for weeks on out? Maybe they worked out a little deal with someone who owns the home, or maybe the bank. We have the tunnel, who it looks like maybe the tracks were there at the time of the making of this film, and since then maybe they've went over and put dirt on top of it or have removed the tracks. You have like these great kind of costume effects in this film, but I think really the interesting part of that is most of the film was pretty standard, very kind of standard scenes and camera movement and just kind of the similar kind of traditional blocking of like how things come and go and how the scenes look. But I think the interesting thing of like when you have such a film that relies on the scene and the scene working really needs to work more than all the other ones, a lot of planning has to go into it. And I admire that a lot about this film, because they had to get the locations. They had to decide, yeah, this is it. And then they had to go into a lot of development of like making the miniatures and making it look right and filming it. And there was the optical effects, if that's the direction they went with in the background when you saw it potentially getting closer. And then just being out there on the location to film these things. I think it's all very cool, and a lot of planning had to go into it. Nice little details, like the details of what the car looks like. What do they drive around? That matte black. There's the detail in the graphics on the side of it to kind of help sell it. I think those are all really cool details that had to be thought about and planned out ahead of time. And you do a lot of planning no matter what in films, but I think when it comes to trying to sell something like a miniature, it's pretty cool. And you don't see it a lot, or at least as much nowadays. And this wasn't an expensive film. You know, it was a TV film. I don't know what the budgets were in the early 90s for something like that, but I know it wasn't a huge production. So they had to get creative on how to do that and how to sell the idea, like the moment of impact, how they would sell that idea and how they would sell that effect. And I think it was successful. When you watch it for the first time without doing a freeze frame on the miniatures, I think it sells it. I think they did a really good job. Okay, so that's it for our lunch breakdown analysis of Sometimes They Come Back, a lesser known, less appreciated Stephen King film from that time frame. It was great to dive into it, really go frame by frame to kind of see how they did things and just kind of think about it and the problems that potentially these filmmakers had and what creative solutions they came up with. I think it's fun. I think it's a fun little film, and looking forward to doing more like this in the future. Okay, see you on the next one. Gotta love it.